This video, the recording is just, it's hell. So I recorded this entire video, and then I rewatched it to edit it just a little bit, and I realized that my lapel mic was too high up on my body, and I'm apparently very loud, and so it just blew out and ruined the audio quality. And I don't know how to mess around with audio quality, so I was just gonna re-record. And then I was into question 2 of my re-recording when I had to go and take my medicine. So hopefully this take will work. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Joy, and I do writing and art videos. And I am doing a Halloween Q&A as I draw a spooky picture. Picture was drawn ahead of time so that I can focus on the questions more. But I did draw the picture on the same day as I am answering these questions. Okay, so let's get into the first question. Rami asks, what is your favorite thing about Earth? Also, would you learn a theory in magic? First question, what is your favorite thing about Earth? My favorite thing about Earth is that we are not so far away from the sun that we freeze to death, but not so close that we burn to death. I think that the fact that Earth is the only planet, that we've seen from what I've researched on astronomy, I think that since Earth is the only planet that fits that description, there is a creator behind it, and it's just amazing how God designed our solar system and space and stuff. I just got past astronomy in earth science, and so I'm very, my brain is just filled with astronomy. As far as your second question, I would learn a theory in magic. That sounds really cool, and I would want to be mentored under Light Spinner. Jenny asks, what is your favorite color and why? Favorite color, that's hard to answer, actually. So I'm an artist, and from an art perspective, all the colors of the color wheel, as well as black and white, which aren't technically colors, all the colors of the color wheel plus black and white are important to creating the mood for a piece. I have great appreciation for all the colors, but if you're talking about the color scheme that I like to use blue and purple the most. I know that you probably were just asking, what color would you, name your character in Among Us or something like that, but I wanted to do the art perspective because I'm an artist, so. I like blue and purple the most. They're very peaceful colors, and they make beautiful night sky images and stuff like that, but all the colors are important, so that's my take. Dr. Spencer Leah asks, what is your favorite season? Summer. My birthday is in the summer, and the weather's nice, and there's just a sense that you are free to do whatever. I don't like the winter because it is cold and aggravates my depression, but that's why I like the summer. Coco asks, how did Shadow Weaver become your favorite She-Ra character? Also, what's the worst part about having Lyme disease? So, Shadow Weaver became my favorite She-Ra character not exactly when she first showed up on screen, but I liked her as soon as she showed up on screen. And I know that sounds like I just contradicted myself, but let me explain. I thought that Shadow Weaver was a very interesting character with a really cool character design pretty much right off the bat. However, I didn't sympathize with her in season 1 except for a little bit when she lost control of the Black Garnet, because I realized, whoa, this lady's crazy. She's talking to rocks and stuff like that. But I think that I really liked her as a villain in season 1. She was definitely my favorite character still in season 1, even though I didn't sympathize with her. I did sympathize with her pretty much as soon as the Light Spinner episode started. I was like, whoa, she's as Light Spinner, she's super cool, and she cares about Micah, and she's beautiful and stuff like that. And showed her in prison, with her sharp claw, scratching another tally mark on the wall. I was just oh, poor thing. And then later on when she couldn't get her food and she was just reaching out for it and couldn't get to it, I was like, poor thing. I want you to be okay. Can I hug you? So I sympathize with characters really easily. So as soon as Shadow Weaver started showing signs of being more than just a power-hungry tyrant, I was like, oh, baby. So, yeah, that's how she became my favorite She-Ra character. I also really relate to her because I used to be kind of a toxic person as well, and a lot of her problems with projection and low emotional intelligence, that's something that I deal with as well. I know that I might be the only one who relates to Shadow Weaver, but yeah. What's the worst part about having Lyme disease? So, disclaimer, I may not actually have it anymore. I may be cured. In a year I might eat those words, but I was treated and I feel much, much, much better. now, and I think that my remaining problems are caused by other diagnoses that are unrelated to Lyme disease. However, the worst part about having Lyme disease when I did definitely have it was there's a lot of bad stuff about it. Let me think. It's tied between two things. So first, the feeling of powerlessness over your own health, and like the wondering of, when I wake up, will I feel decent enough to carry on with my day, or just horrible? And then also the fact that nobody understands. See, Lyme disease isn't like autism where everybody knows about it and there's like whole foundations dedicated to exploring it. The government tries to suppress information about Lyme disease. And if you want to hear more about this, I may leave some resources down in the description so that you can look at this. Government does not like Lyme disease. They don't like to talk about it. And if the government doesn't want to talk about it, it basically just doesn't exist in the minds of most Americans. And so because of that, it was just really hard when I was in the worst part of it. Not to mention I was a teenager and I had it, meaning like I couldn't go to friends' houses often because I couldn't stay up late. I couldn't go to sporting events because I was just so tired. And I couldn't do sporting events because I was in pain and stuff. So that might have been the hardest part about having Lyme disease, is the loneliness and the fact that nobody understood, I felt like. Isis asks, what is your favorite story that you've ever written? So story, let me actually open my short stories on Wattpad so that I can point you guys in the right direction. I'm not going to read the entire thing here, but actually I think I will. So there's a story I wrote recently. There are a lot of short stories I've written that I'm very proud of. As far as gosh, my thoughts are really disorganized. As far as novels go, favorite one so far, definitely Allura. Starwalker may surpass that, but currently it's a mess because I'm rewriting it and it's horrible. But Allura, I'm really proud of that one. There are a lot of short stories I'm proud of. I'm proud of pretty much every single one of them. I'm going to point you to one and then I'll read another, because the other one is really short. So Tell Me is a short story I wrote for my creative writing class, and it's basically about a woman who has drinking problems because she sexually harassed a man to get ahead in life. I'll leave it there because I don't want to spoil it, but that's what it's about. And I was really proud of it, especially since I was able to tell her thoughts with very little dialogue, which I know people are like, oh, if you don't have dialogue, your story is bad. So I think that it was really good. I'm really proud of it. And there's one I actually will read that I also wrote for creative writing class. And it's actually based on Light Spinner and Nell's relationship in my books. So here we go. She walked along the dusty road on a little island, her black rayon scarf blowing in the wind. Stopping in front of the little house, she sighed, running her hand along the railing. The small cottage hadn't been lived in like they promised. Something about the dark cedar wood and the way rose vines curled around the porch reminded her of him. The sky was his tawny skin, the grass his soft curls. She entered the old house, heart beating, breath quick. The musty smell of a time long forgotten entered her nostrils as she walked, each step creaking the old wood as she entered a room with a small crib and a changing table. We'll be happy here, love, he said, you and I against the world. She dropped to the floor, a gasp breaking through her chest as tears stung her eyes. The echoes of little voices she would never hear rang through her ears, and in that silence she stood there, the only memory of yesterday. You'll get the rest of the backstory when Starwalker comes out. But that's my favorite story that I've written recently. I've written so much that I just couldn't pick a favorite. They're like my children. Let's see. Coco asks, what's the cringiest thing you've ever said or done? Also, what is your favorite art piece that you've ever done? Cringiest thing I've ever said or done. There's a lot of things, but some of them wouldn't be appropriate for me to say in a YouTube video, so I'm going to stick to an occurrence that is really embarrassing. So, disclaimer before I start. I do not ship Shadow Weaver and Micah. I briefly considered it, like after season 5, obviously, when they're both adults. But I don't ship them, never seriously ship them. However, I am autistic. And I think that one of the traits of my autism, this isn't a problem with all autistic people, but trait with my autism is that Sometimes I confuse romantic and platonic affection. For example, there's this old picture that I drew like a year ago, and it depicts them in bed, Shadow Weaver and Micah. And it's not like sexual or anything like that. It's not explicit at all. But it is romantic coded, I would say. And I didn't mean that at all. I pictured both of them at the time to have like PTSD from the stuff they've been through. And it was kind of like supposed to be comforting, but instead it looked romantic. So I'm not really proud of that. Affection issues have been part of my writing since the beginning. And when I posted Allura on Wattpad, it was a problem with especially Lightspinner and Norman. And I'm not proud of that. I think that that's pretty cringy and embarrassing, because it's like, I should know better, and I don't. I'm better at it now, I would say, but I have to have lists for different types of affection. And that's embarrassing, but it is what it is. I mean, like autism and stuff. As far as my favorite art piece goes, I would say that it is my Ghost of a Rose picture, which should be showing up on screen here shortly. And I just really like that picture right now. That answer might change in a year, but it is what it is. Rami asks, would you ever watch Miraculous Ladybug? If so, I hope you enjoy it. I'm planning to watch it after I graduate. Not sure if I'm going to finish because I might have outgrown it, but that's me based on having only seen like 2 scenes of the entire show. I've heard that some people my age really like it. I thought I outgrew Steven Universe because of the animation style, but apparently I didn't, because I love Steven Universe. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm going to give it a shot, not sure if I'll finish it. Coco asks, what is your favorite food and favorite emoji? I don't have a favorite emoji. I just use whichever one fits best. Favorite food, I would say, is just the typical American diet, honestly. So like macaroni, burgers, fries, pizza. And I can actually have all of those things as long as it's gluten-free, so that's pretty awesome. I gotta be honest, I try to eat healthy, but I am very much an American, so. Dr. Spencer Leah asks, do you play on any other video game consoles aside from the Switch, like the Xbox or PlayStation? I do not. We have an Xbox. I don't usually play on it, mainly because my favorite games are all Nintendo games, except for Spyro, which I still prefer playing on the Switch. Isis asks, what age range do you usually write for? Also, what is your ultimate goal with drawing/writing? Age range, I always classify on Wattpad my books as young adult, meaning teenagers, so like 13 to 18, I would say. Although I do have people outside of those age ranges that read my works. My youngest reader is younger than 13, and my oldest reader is much older than 18. I do write for more mature audiences, I would say, and not in the sense that I have like sexual content or graphic violence in my works. I mean, like that would be for an adult novel anyway. But because of the suicidality themes, obviously that's something that teenagers face. I would say teenagers deal with that a ton. It's everywhere. However, I want people to be mature and discerning when they read my books. So I would say high school audience is what I write for. Also, what is my ultimate goal? What is your ultimate goal with drawing and writing? Also from Isis. Ultimate goal, glorify God and lead more people to Him. And I do that in a different way than most Christian writers. So when I say, I put Christian in quotes because when we're talking about Christian writers, there's several things you can mean. So do you mean writers who happen to be Christian, writers who put Christian themes in their books, writers who preach the gospel directly in their works, or pieces marketed toward Christian people? And this is an ongoing debate in art, and it's like you have to clarify what you mean, because it's like 21 Pilots, they're Christians and their faith is in their music, but they're not marketed toward Christians, and as a result you would never find them on Christian radio stations. Many Christian writers, I feel, they feel a need to preach directly in their work. Not saying that is a failure 100% of the time. Overt religious preaching can work in books. For example, The Kite Runner by Callum Hosseini, I believe it is. I'm probably going to mispronounce or not get his name right, but The Kite Runner, that is a Muslim perspective book, but I do think, despite not being a Muslim, that it has that it does its Muslim proselytizing quite well. The Case for Christ is a pretty good film, I would say, and that one directly preaches in its work. I mean, the main character becomes a Christian at the end. However, I find that that's a very hard and limiting style to do in an artful way. So for me, I find that if I made my main characters Christian, I would have a tendency to be very preachy and not put the message before the story. And if you put the message before a story, you're going to fail at both, because the story should always take precedence, since that's what people are here for. If they want to hear just a message, they could go and listen to a sermon or listen to a live stream by a Christian YouTuber. You are writing a story first and foremost, not trying to push a message. Thus, you need to do it in an artful way. And that's what I try to do with my books. So rather than making my main characters Christian, or mentioning God, like God is in the Christian sense of God, I tend to lean more toward having Christian themes in my books. So I will mention oftentimes in my books the idea of grace. I mean, the Lara trilogy is about the story of somebody who fell from grace and ended up getting redeemed and found healing and stuff. And there's religious undertones, I would say, to that, particularly in the third book. But, there's a lot of grace themes, which is a very Christian idea. Also, the idea that marriage is not supposed to be something that you enter because the other person makes you feel good, but because you want to serve them. That's a very Christian idea, also found in the Allura trilogy. And you guys might be like, well, you're hijacking Shira for your religious preaching. I'm like, no. That's not the case. I mean, my perspective impacts how I write, of course. But I do it in a subtle way so as to impact people in the best way possible. So that's my ultimate goal with drawing and writing. There are lower goals, though, like helping me cope with mental illness, just having fun, that sort of thing. But first and foremost, if I do all those things and I do them well, but I have no love, then I've accomplished nothing. And I believe that the most loving thing that I can do is to glorify God, lead more people to Him. Coco asks, what was the worst, best movie you've ever watched? Also try an Australian accent. So I'm going to botch the Australian accent, Coco. Coco's actually Australian, so this is going to be interesting. As far as worst, best, I'm not sure if you mean worst, best as in like you would say, oh, that was the worst, best thing I've ever seen, which in that case, that would have to be Shira 1985. That is literally the worst, best thing I've ever seen. You can watch that thing and have a genuinely good time because of how ridiculous the show is. So if you're asking about worst, best movie / film or whatever, it would have to be that. You're talking about worst and best, like what is the worst movie you've ever seen, what is the best? Worst film I've ever seen, God's Not Dead, probably. The worst one that I have seen on screen. There are many worse movies than God's Not Dead, I know. But I haven't ever watched them because I know how bad they are. And the best movie I've ever seen, that one's hard. There's so many good films. I'm just thinking, there are a million animated films running through my mind right now. I'm going to have to say, I'm going to pick 3. I know that you asked for 1, but I'm going to do 3. Big Hero 6, WALL-E, Beauty and the Beast. They all have such interesting and amazing themes in them, and they're told in a subtle and artful way that kids can understand. I always have such great respect for people who are able to give a good message to kids and also make it interesting for the kids to watch. And the message is like, geez, this is deep. But it flies over the kids' heads, and that can be a good thing sometimes, that they'll understand when they're older. But yeah, I think that those movies do a very artful job at those themes. Australian accent, I might botch this. Okay. Hello everyone, this is Joy, and welcome to my channel. Where we're going to be answering questions on Halloween. Happy Halloween. Okay. Now we can move on from that embarrassment. Dr. Spencer Leah asks, can you recommend us some great shows to watch that are just as good as Shira? 2 of them. First is Steven Universe. The only problem I have with it is that it has a bunch of filler in it, especially in the first season, and the filler is really hard to get through, in my opinion, but I'm anti-filler in TV shows, so take that with a grain of salt. The show is very good. It's way more consistent with its themes than She-Ra, especially when it comes to its villain. And it doesn't pull crap like She-Ra did with Shadow Weaver. And the other one, obviously, is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Nothing, I would say no show is better than Avatar: The Last Airbender. Steven Universe gets close, but it's not quite there. It's both are great series. I can't say that I know of any series that are better than She-Ra besides those two, but maybe somebody in the comments section could prove me wrong on that. Isis asks, what is your favorite work of writing that you've made? Also, how much do you enjoy writing and drawing on a scale of 1 to 10 for each? Favorite work of writing that I've ever made? So, in general, I'll just read a poem that I really like recently. It was just one of my favorites. Oopsies. Oh, there we go. Microsoft Word was not working at first. Find it. So this was an Italian sonnet I wrote for English, or not English class, gosh, creative writing class. And it's called Little One. And it's really it's a really fun poem. I had a lot of fun. Record this story for me, little one, for I am growing old, faint and old and gray. The day went by me on its merry way, and now my song is done, completely sung. No fretting for me, for I have now won the great prize of life, which doesn't quite say the things I've learned while traveling this way. Let go of the arms to which you've clung. That was an awkward line. I know where I'm going, known all along. The Lord has shown me not to stray again. And there will be an hour once more when we'll see each other soon with nothing wrong. So, sweet child, when now becomes then, remember me, smile, and sing this song. So the only problem with that one is that I didn't read it in iambic pentameter. It's written that way, but I didn't read it that way because it's hard to read in iambic pentameter. I wrote that one. This is really sad. It was inspired by what I think Shadow Weaver would say on her deathbed if she had lived to 94 or whatever, and she was talking to Adora. Very sad, but bittersweet at the same time. So, and it's not stupid like the show was. Also, how much do you enjoy writing and drawing on a scale of 1 to 10 for each? 10 for both, although I do get burned out. So I get burned out with art more easily because I will sometimes work for 2 straight hours on something and then I just don't want to draw for a week. Writing is less of a burnout for me because I can just work on another piece and it's no problem. And I've written legitimately 4,000 words in a day. I think that's my record high for daily word count that I know of. Rami asks, if you could choose one fictional husband/wife, who would it be? Zuko. I'm 17, Zuko is 16, just to be clear. Zuko is everything I want in a man. He is Asian, which I'm into Asians. Zuko is Asian, and he is just so precious. He's just really awkward, and he thinks deeply, and he struggles with, the same things I struggle with. And I feel like we would be, great pals. And I feel like he wouldn't mind that I'm autistic either. I know that sounds, really dumb, but I think that most fictional boys that I would go after, they would be like, oh, you're autistic, you're weird. But he wouldn't. That's how boys are in real life with me anyway. Dr. Spencer Leia asks, have you ever traveled? If so, favorite place to visit? I've never been outside the U.S. I wanted to go outside the U.S. at some point, but then the pandemic that shall not be named hit. I want to go to France, Israel, and the United Arab Emirates at some point. I've never been outside the U.S. Favorite place to travel within the U.S. would be San Francisco Peaks in Arizona. They have beautiful mountains, and I think, I was in Destin, Florida this summer at the beach, and that was really nice, but I have to say I do prefer mountains to beaches personally, because I don't like sand. Everyone's going to pull an Anakin on me because of that. Coco asks, is there any mention of bread in Starwalker? Bread. Yes. Let me open a scene. I'm only going to read part of it because I do have to edit this scene, but I will read this for you. Shadow Weaver was preparing a sheet on the floor of her quarters for them to eat on when her servant returned, beaming as she put the bread in the center. "You look happy," she murmured, putting on a full facial veil so she could eat. "My lady, I'm always happy," Carmen replied, taking the 2-year-old Catra out of her crib and sitting down. She fed her small chunks of the baguette, and Shadow Weaver did the same with Adora. "You know, I just found something out." "Micah and Angela's got a date for their wedding," Carmen exclaimed. Shadow Weaver almost choked on her bread. "They've been engaged for a year. I knew that, but I never actually expected them to go through with it. What a silly thought. Of course Micah would marry her. He was Micah, the brave, loyal, sweet man who would put his life on the line for those he loved. She bit her cheek, her heart stinging at that last part. "How is that newsworthy?" she asked, taking another bite and feeding Adora. "Well, I was hoping you'd want to crash the wedding so I could see what a Mayan wedding's like," Carmen said with a shrug. "It ain't allowed for me, but I can still look at two people being in love and pledging themselves to each other for life." Okay, so that's an excerpt of a scene. I'm not going to read the rest because it does need heavy editing. However, there's your bread dose from Starwalker. If you could be any animal, what would you be? Nan asks. Also, do you think double texting is a big deal? I actually had to look up what double texting was before this Q&A because I had no idea what she was talking about. So if you could be any animal, what would you be? Probably a cat, because cats are withdrawn and subdued, kind of like me at times. I'm like an extroverted introvert, but I'm also autistic, and so I'm socially anxious. Not that all autistic people are. And so I kind of hold myself up at the time. So I like to be a cat. Do I think double texting is a big deal? I would say most of the time, no. I don't get why people have a problem with you sending more than one text before somebody replies. I mean, if you're being desperate and you're like, "Please love me," to your SO when they haven't replied, then that might be annoying. But like, I do that. I do double texting with my friends. Like, it's not a problem. Catherine asks, and this is the last question. Catherine asks, what made you want to write in the first place? In short, I had special interest when I was a kid, and people got annoyed with me over it because all I wanted to do was talk about them. All I wanted to do was play related to them, like play pretend. And eventually, people just didn't want to play with me because I was annoying. And so I would do something by myself, which was like write the stories down on paper. And then that evolved into writing to cope with mental illness, which started around 7th grade for me. But those are the two main reasons that I wanted to write in the first place. And that's all the questions that I received from you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please feel free to subscribe if you aren't subscribed already. And I will be back next week with more awesome content for you guys. Happy Halloween. Thank you for watching, and God bless you all.